In a picturesque suburban neighborhood, where manicured lawns and perfectly aligned mailboxes defined the landscape, lived a diverse group of residents bound by the iron-fisted rules of their homeowners association. Among them was Sam, a laid-back ranch owner who cherished his sprawling property and the peace it provided. He often spent his evenings tending to his animals, enjoying the tranquility of country life just beyond the confines of the suburban sprawl. However, this idyllic setting was threatened by Karen, an outspoken member of the HOA who believed she had the authority to enforce rules beyond her own yard. With her perfectly coiffed hair and an air of entitlement, she considered herself the neighborhood's self-appointed guardian, often meddling in others' affairs under the guise of community improvement. Karen's latest mission was to plan her daughter's dream wedding, which she envisioned as a grand affair that would outshine all other celebrations in the area. Unfortunately for Sam, Karen's ambitions led her to set her sights on his private ranch, an oasis she deemed perfect for hosting this extravagant event. In her mind, it was only right that everyone should share in the beauty of what she deemed a community asset. As preparations began without so much as a word to Sam, tension simmered beneath the surface. Little did Karen know that her entitled behavior would soon ignite a spark that would lead to the most unexpected, and humorous, retaliation imaginable. The stage was set for an epic showdown between property rights and unyielding entitlement, one that would leave both neighbors forever changed. Karen's entitled behavior was a well-known phenomenon in the neighborhood, as she frequently crossed the line between assertive and downright intrusive. With her holier-than-thou attitude, she often took it upon herself to enforce HOA rules, targeting anyone she deemed unworthy of living up to her standards. If a neighbor dared to let their lawn grow too long or paint their house a color outside the HOA-approved palette, Karen would swoop in like a hawk, armed with her clipboard and an arsenal of passive-aggressive remarks. Her self-importance was magnified by her position on the HOA board, where she relished the power it gave her to dictate how others should live. Conversations among residents often turned to eye rolls and chuckles at Karen's latest antics, but few had the courage to confront her directly. They knew that doing so would invite retaliation not only from Karen but also from those who blindly followed her lead. As the wedding planning intensified, Karen's entitlement reached new heights. She justified commandeering Sam's ranch by claiming it was for the greater good of the community. After all, wouldn't a picturesque wedding elevate neighborhood prestige? Her audacity led her to ignore Sam's property rights completely, convincing herself that her vision took precedence over anyone else's ownership. Determined to uphold her reputation as the ultimate HOA enforcer, she sent out invitations boasting about the exclusive venue and began organizing every detail without so much as a nod toward Sam. The more Karen plotted, the more she felt invincible, blind to the brewing storm of resistance that awaited her. Little did she know that her entitlement would soon set off a chain reaction leading to unexpected consequences. As the day of the wedding approached, Karen's excitement transformed into an overwhelming frenzy of planning. She envisioned an extravagant event that would showcase her daughter as the belle of the ball, and in her mind, Sam's ranch was the perfect backdrop for this grand spectacle. With its sweeping fields and picturesque barn, it was a scene straight out of a fairy tale. Naturally, she felt entitled to use it, convinced that her vision justified her actions. Karen recruited a team of neighbors, many of whom were apprehensive but too intimidated to refuse, to help with preparations. They set up elaborate decorations, including string lights and floral arrangements that transformed the landscape into a wedding wonderland. All the while, Karen painted a rosy picture of community togetherness, insisting that this event would bring everyone closer. While she busily orchestrated the festivities, Sam remained blissfully unaware of Karen's plans until he stumbled upon a flurry of activity on his property one evening. The sight of tents being erected and tables being set up sent a wave of disbelief through him. He immediately recognized Karen's handiwork. The same woman who had previously harassed neighbors for minor infractions now had the audacity to hijack his land. Realizing the severity of the situation, Sam confronted Karen, but she brushed him off with a condescending smile, claiming that he should feel honored to host such an important event. Her sense of entitlement was staggering. she believed that his ranch was simply an extension of her own ambitions. As Karen continued her preparations with reckless abandon, Sam began to hatch a plan of his own, one that would turn this wedding into an unforgettable disaster for Karen and serve justice for his violated property rights. It was a warm Saturday morning when Sam decided to take a stroll around his ranch, enjoying the fresh air and the sounds of nature. As he approached his property's main pasture, he noticed something unusual in the distance, a flurry of activity that didn't belong. Confused, he quickened his pace, only to find an astonishing scene unfolding before him. A full-blown wedding setup sprawled across his land. Sam's heart sank as he took in the sight of white tents, rows of chairs, and a lavish archway draped in flowers. The unmistakable sound of laughter and music wafted through the air, mingling with the distant sound of clanging metal. Someone was setting up a catering station. His jaw dropped as he recognized Karen at the center of it all, barking orders at her minions with a confidence that bordered on delusion. Storming closer, Sam's disbelief turned to anger. "What on earth is going on here?" he shouted, startling a nearby worker who nearly dropped an armful of decorations. Karen turned around with an insincere smile plastered on her face, as if she were simply introducing him to a surprise party rather than commandeering his property for her daughter's wedding. "Oh, Sam! Isn't it wonderful? We decided your ranch would be the perfect venue," she exclaimed, completely disregarding his obvious distress. She continued with her rehearsed spiel about community spirit and shared joy, oblivious to the fact that she was breaking the law by using someone else's property without consent. Fury boiled within Sam as he realized just how far Karen had crossed the line. This was no mere violation, it was an outright invasion. He knew then that he had to act, and with a wicked grin forming on his lips, he began plotting his revenge. Sam marched up to Karen, his fists clenched at his sides. "Karen, you can't just take over my property like this. I didn't give you permission to use my ranch for your daughter's wedding." His voice rang with a mix of disbelief and anger as he gestured toward the chaotic scene around them. Karen, seemingly unfazed, placed her hands on her hips and tilted her head. "Oh, come on, Sam. Don't you want to be part of something beautiful? This is a community event." She waved her hand dismissively, as if his objections were nothing more than minor inconveniences. "Besides, I thought you'd appreciate the publicity. Your ranch could be the talk of the town." Her words only fueled Sam's frustration. "Publicity? This isn't about publicity, it's about respect for my property rights. You've crossed a line." He was determined to stand his ground, but Karen's entitled demeanor made it challenging. She had a knack for twisting situations to her advantage, and Sam could see that she was trying to play the community card. "Don't be such a Grinch. Everyone here is excited to celebrate," she replied with an exaggerated pout, turning the attention of nearby onlookers toward him. What kind of neighbor would ruin their happiness? Sam felt the weight of her words pressing down on him. He knew that many in the neighborhood had been cowed into silence by Karen's domineering nature. But he also recognized that if he didn't put his foot down now, he would be letting her walk all over him, again. With a deep breath, he squared his shoulders and firmly replied, "This isn't happening here. I won't allow it." The tension hung thick in the air as Karen's expression shifted from surprise to fury. Sam could see the wheels turning in her mind as she realized her plan was unraveling before her very eyes. After standing his ground against Karen, Sam felt a surge of determination mixed with amusement at the absurdity of the situation. He couldn't let her get away with this blatant violation of his property rights. As he walked back to his house, the gears in his mind began to turn. Sam had always been fond of his bulls, known for their spirited nature and stubbornness. They were gentle giants most of the time, but if provoked, they could create chaos in a matter of seconds. An idea began to form, one that would deliver the perfect dose of poetic justice. Why not unleash his bulls during the wedding? The sight of those massive creatures rampaging through Karen's meticulously planned event would be both hilarious and satisfying. That evening, Sam set to work crafting his plan. He carefully calculated the timing, knowing that the wedding would reach its peak during the ceremony when everyone would be gathered in front of the altar. With a few strategic tweaks to the fencing around the pasture, he could ensure that his bulls would have an unobstructed path straight into the heart of the celebration. He reached out to a couple of neighbors who had also suffered under Karen's reign of terror. They were more than willing to lend a hand, excited by the prospect of seeing her plans turned upside down. Together, they devised distractions and diversions to keep Karen and her guests occupied while Sam prepared his grand entrance for the bulls. As excitement buzzed in the air, Sam felt a sense of camaraderie with his neighbors for the first time in years. This wouldn't just be about payback, it was about standing up against entitlement and reclaiming their community spirit. With everything in place, Sam smiled at the thought of how this wedding would soon become a legendary tale, a story that would be shared long after Karen's ambitions crumbled under the weight of their collective resolve. The day of the wedding dawned bright and sunny, but Sam felt a different kind of excitement bubbling beneath the surface. He arrived at his ranch early, making final adjustments to the fencing while keeping a watchful eye on the wedding festivities unfolding in the distance. The sound of laughter and cheerful music floated through the air, but all Sam could think about was the grand entrance that awaited. As guests began to gather, he watched from behind a nearby tree, his heart racing with anticipation. Karen was radiant, dressed in a flowy gown that swayed with every over-the-top gesture she made while directing the setup. Unbeknownst to her, chaos was about to ensue. With a signal from one of his neighbors, Sam took a deep breath and opened the gate to the pasture. The bulls, two hefty creatures named Buster and Bruno, bounded through with vigor, their hooves thundering against the ground. For a moment, time stood still as everyone turned in unison, their smiles fading into expressions of disbelief. As Buster and Bruno charged toward the wedding site, guests scattered like startled birds. Laughter quickly turned to screams as tables were overturned and decorations flew into the air. The sight of Karen's meticulously arranged floral arch swaying perilously before being trampled brought an unexpected grin to Sam's face. Amidst the chaos, Karen's shrieks pierced through the pandemonium as she tried to regain control of the situation. But it was too late, her carefully curated event had devolved into utter disarray. Sam couldn't help but chuckle as he watched his plan unfold perfectly, a delightful mixture of humor and sweet revenge playing out before him. He had sent a clear message: entitlement has its consequences, and today, in front of all her guests, Karen was getting a taste of her own medicine. As the bulls wreaked havoc among the wedding guests, a dramatic turn of events unfolded that no one could have anticipated. Amidst the chaos, Karen, flailing her arms and shouting orders, stumbled backward into the catering station. In her attempt to regain control, she knocked over a tower of elaborate hors d'oeuvres, sending trays of food crashing to the ground. The sight of caviar and cream puffs splattering everywhere only added to the absurdity of the moment. Guests gasped in shock as Buster and Bruno continued their stampede through the venue, sending chairs flying and chasing after a few frightened children who had ventured too close. Laughter erupted from some onlookers while others stood frozen in disbelief, unsure whether to run or grab their phones to capture the spectacle for social media. Just as it seemed the situation couldn't get any more chaotic, Sam noticed that one of the bulls had veered off course toward the makeshift dance floor where Karen's daughter was attempting her first dance with her new husband. The couple's romantic moment turned into sheer panic as they scrambled out of the way, narrowly avoiding an encounter with a massive horned beast. Meanwhile, Karen's frantic attempts to restore order only made matters worse. Every time she yelled at her guests to calm down, it sent another wave of fear through them, prompting even more chaos. Sam stood back, watching the scene unfold with a mix of amusement and satisfaction. The dramatic turn had transformed what was supposed to be a picture-perfect wedding into a legendary tale of revenge that would be retold in their neighborhood for years to come. As Karen's carefully crafted plans crumbled around her, it became clear that this day would not only serve as a lesson about entitlement but also a reminder of the unexpected power that community solidarity could wield against those who overstep their bounds. As the dust settled from the wedding debacle, the consequences of Karen's actions began to unfold in a way she never anticipated. The once jubilant atmosphere was replaced by confusion and chaos, and her reputation as the neighborhood enforcer took a significant hit. Guests, who had been loyal to her cause, now stood in disbelief at the havoc caused by her entitled decisions. In the aftermath, Sam couldn't help but feel a sense of justice. While Karen frantically tried to salvage what was left of her daughter's special day, whispers quickly spread among the guests about her disregard for property rights. Many had witnessed firsthand how she had trampled over not only Sam's land but also the unwritten rules of neighborly respect. As word got out about the disaster, several residents who had previously been intimidated by Karen's authority finally found their voices. They rallied together, sharing stories of her past overreach and demanding accountability. Karen soon found herself facing a growing backlash within the community she once dominated. No longer could she hide behind her facade of power. Neighbors began to speak up against her behavior, emboldened by Sam's stand against her actions. The HOA board convened an emergency meeting where members discussed Karen's blatant violation of property rights and her continued entitlement. As tension mounted, it became clear that Karen's influence was waning. Ultimately, she faced disciplinary action from the board, a formal reprimand that would tarnish her reputation and lessen her grip on power within the community. With Karen's reign of intimidation crumbling, Sam felt a renewed sense of camaraderie with his neighbors. This incident had not only brought him satisfaction but also sparked a collective strength within the community, ensuring that entitlement would no longer be tolerated. As they gathered to support one another in rebuilding after the chaos, it became evident that together they could reclaim their neighborhood from those who thought they were above the rules. In the wake of the wedding disaster, a wave of solidarity washed over the neighborhood. As Karen's influence waned, residents began to unite, sharing their experiences and grievances regarding her past behavior. They organized a community meeting at Sam's ranch, turning what had once been a source of tension into a symbol of resilience and camaraderie. Neighbors arrived with dishes to share, each contributing to a potluck that transformed the ranch into a vibrant gathering space filled with laughter and conversation. Sam felt a sense of pride as he watched families come together, rekindling friendships that had faded under Karen's reign of intimidation. The atmosphere was electric with newfound hope and determination. During the meeting, residents discussed ways to establish clearer guidelines for HOA conduct, ensuring that no one would feel oppressed or overlooked again. They formed committees aimed at fostering open communication and mutual respect, determined to create a community where everyone's voice mattered. Sam was appointed to lead one such committee, tasked with reviewing property rights and ensuring that everyone understood them. As the evening wore on, stories were shared about times they had felt bullied or silenced by Karen's heavy-handed tactics. Each tale added fuel to their collective resolve. They were determined not to let this type of behavior go unchecked any longer. In a show of support for Sam, neighbors promised to help him with his ranch, offering their services for maintenance and upkeep in appreciation for his bravery in standing up to Karen. What had begun as an unwelcome takeover turned into a rallying point that fortified their sense of community. As the sun set over the ranch, bathing everything in golden light, Sam realized that while he had sought revenge against one entitled neighbor, he had inadvertently sparked a movement that would empower everyone in the neighborhood. Together, they were ready to face any challenge. Entitlement would no longer rule their lives. As the weeks passed, the community's transformation from a place of fear to one of solidarity became evident. Karen, once the self-proclaimed queen of the HOA, had retreated into obscurity, her influence shattered by the wedding debacle. Meanwhile, Sam's ranch evolved into a hub of activity, where neighbors gathered not just to work but to celebrate their newfound unity. One sunny afternoon, they organized a grand barbecue at Sam's ranch to mark the occasion, a celebration of resilience and community spirit. The air was filled with the tantalizing aroma of grilled burgers and hot dogs, laughter echoing across the fields as children played games while adults shared stories and formed deeper connections. This gathering was more than just food and fun, it symbolized their commitment to standing together against entitlement. As Sam looked around at the smiling faces, he felt a deep sense of fulfillment. The chaos of the wedding seemed like a distant memory now, replaced by something much more meaningful. He took to the makeshift stage set up near his barn and raised his glass in a toast. To community. May we always stand for what is right and support one another. The crowd erupted in cheers, their spirits high as they clinked glasses and celebrated their triumph over adversity. In a surprising twist of fate, Karen's daughter even showed up, apologizing for her mother's behavior and expressing her desire to make amends with the neighborhood. The warmth of forgiveness filled the air as residents welcomed her with open arms, proving that healing was possible even after conflict. As sunset painted the sky in hues of orange and pink, Sam felt a profound sense of satisfaction wash over him. What began as a nightmare neighbor scenario had blossomed into a story of redemption, camaraderie, and laughter, a reminder that standing up against entitlement could lead to unexpected bonds and a stronger community. Together, they had turned a chaotic situation into an unforgettable chapter in their lives, one that would be recounted with smiles for years to come.